What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Rough Cut Diamond Mines, the place I go to find the rough ideas that we can then turn into something a little more polished. I am, of course, your guide, Dreamscript. This is part 5 of the Cursed Relics Art Challenge, and we're keeping up with all these fun speed draws. Just a reminder, if anybody is interested, I do have a playlist of all the previous parts of the challenge waiting back on my channel, but don't feel like you have to watch those. For now, let's get into the next prompt. So, looks like day 5 is Incense. Normally I'd assume that everyone already knows what this is, but just in case, incense is this material that produces smoke and various scents when it's burned. The most commonly available version you'll see of this is incense sticks that are covered in the material, but there are other types. It's a popular item among witches and many New Age people. My personal favorite kind is the, am I going to pronounce this right at all? Ganesh sticks, extra rich in the black cherry flavor. It's very nice. Also on a side note, I know that the prompt list has it spelled like this, and I did look this up just in case it was something else, but it automatically auto-corrected to the normal spelling, so I'm confident that's just a typo. I checked. I promise I did. If I am mistaken, though, please feel free to let me know. I'd love to know. Based on all of that, there's actually a sticker I have that would be nearly perfect for this one. And here it is. I'll be honest, this sticker almost looks like it's a cursed item in and of itself, but I thought it would be something interesting for an incense cone. Those suckers put off a ton of wonderful smoky atmosphere that I plan to use to create a truly spooky drawing. But we'll see how successful that ends up being. For now, we still need the curse's intensity. You know the drill by now. Spin the wheel! Ooh, dangerous! Hell yeah! Pardon my language. Just got a little excited there. So, a dangerous level cursed item. Now, obviously, you could argue that every cursed item can easily be called dangerous to some extent, but what I mean when I'm using dangerous is less about the threat itself and more about range here. If you've been watching since the first video, you'll probably have noticed that everything in the previous videos, I've been trying to keep the effects of the curses themselves mostly to whomever is in immediate contact with the item, obvious exception being the sitar. But with dangerous, I'm thinking of it more of a AoE kind of thing, area of effect for those who don't know what I'm talking about. And if that is still confusing, think of it as the difference between a bullet and a grenade. One tends to be just one person's problem. The other is everyone else's. Now, with all that said, let's make our cursed artifact. So, to anyone who pays attention during my speed drop portions of these videos, I'm sure that you can see, especially in this particular one, that I am something of a complete uncertain mess when it comes to actually making these illustrations. Everything from drawing and then deleting my work to changing the size aspects of the picture itself, the trials and errors of the coloring process, and a lot of the time, I don't show all of that, especially all the times that I have to stop, look at things grown, erase, and try again. Because I'm trying to make something for these videos fairly quickly, and no one needs to see all that nonsense, I thought this time, though, I should include it. Why? I don't really know how to explain it. I think part of it was because this one was a picture that I had to figure out the story of before the picture. Every other one of these so far has been the reverse. I draw the picture first, having only these vague ideas of what I want the curse on the item to be able to do or look like in action, so I have somewhere to start. But this one, I needed to figure out the details of it first. And I think that was caused by the curveball of having this be a dangerous level cursed item, especially with the way that I'm defining them. Making it clear that something works on a wider range than just one person is a tricky thing to do with a static picture. Like if I had the skills to make animations of these cursed items working in glorious moving detail, I would love to do that. But as somebody who loves animation and knows all the work that goes into them, My current schedule with real life, there is no way I would ever be able to do something like that in a timely fashion. Like with my current computer setup, I'd be lucky to get something out in 6 month intervals. As for the actual drawing, it was hard to figure out how much of the curse's effect I wanted to show and how much I wanted to be still something I could share with the story. And since I'm an absolute hyper creative writer creator who wants to share every single little detail of everything I've ever created with anyone who's willing to listen, that was hard. That was so hard to do. It's really, really hard to just not go off in these videos all the time. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that I have scripts for these videos and I have to work really hard to keep these under control. The drawing portion itself doesn't always have that leash, as, again, anyone who's been watching from the beginning could have guessed. Not that I didn't enjoy this picture, I do want to make that clear. I enjoy all of these pictures and the process I put into them, and even when I'm struggling with them. I honestly love doing this challenge. These are fun prompts, and I'm living for making these stories of terrible things happening for some reason. Honestly, the same reason most people do. It's fun, and it's certainly cheaper than hashing my feelings out in therapy. So, yeah, creative outlets are good. But I think we can basically call this one done. So, let's go on over into that story I was talking about. You'll see how much that ended up shaping this picture. So, enjoy.
They had been warned the store only brought trouble, that many who shopped there often met terrible fates within days, and their gruesome remains left to be found by the patrolling city guards. But they had to go. They were adventurers, after all. A shop that people went to right before they were killed in a horrifying fashion? It was either some kind of monster's den or a cult outpost. Whichever it was, the city guards had reached out to their guild to have the situation dealt with. And dealt with quickly, as the city captain had requested in a less than compromising tone. When they entered the place, it looked like any other shop adventurers like them would frequent, filled with strange and potentially useful items, with a cheerful and quirky shopkeep behind the counter. "Welcome, adventurers! Can I help you with anything?" the shopkeeper asked, looking from the book they had been reading. One of the adventurers instantly clocked that it was a book for abjuration magics and gave the others a sideways look. They nodded in return. "Perhaps. We were told we could find something unusual here." These were the words they had been told to say. That asking for something unusual seemed to be the only common link between those that had been attacked. The sharpest eyes among the group immediately noticed how the eyes of the shopkeep glaze over with a white fog just before they smile, and the group curses internally. Whoever is causing the actual problems apparently is only using this shop as a distribution spot. They can recognize a triggered mind control when they see it at this point. "Right this way, adventurers," the shopkeep says as they lead the group into a back room. Within the room is a number of standard tools and supplies for any kind of shop. But the shopkeep simply passes right through this room and into a deeper room, one that opens magically when they approach the wall. This instantly causes the adventurers to tighten their grip on their weapons, as this newly opened room looks far more unsettling. The room looks something similar to a small temple, black and white stonework lining the walls, and lit only with low-burning candles. Carvings in the walls depict strange creatures, strange even by the typical adventurer's standards. None of them can identify the creatures, nor any of the symbols surrounding them. At the back of the group, their fighter nudges the mage slightly as they nod towards the biggest creature among the depictions. A creature with a mouth wide enough to ensnare a grown human, razor-looking claws, and a look of rabid delight in the eyes. The mage shudders at the image and taps the side of their head once. They'll remember all this, and especially that depiction to research later. At the head of the room, the shopkeep leads them to a stone altar and picks up one of the remaining few boxes on it before turning back to them. I'm sure you'll find this particular item unusual enough, dear adventurers. These come from a distant land where they are used by blessed clerics to bring aid to the people in times of extreme need and grant wishes in times of prosperity, they explained. The group glances at their own cleric, whose mouth has formed a hard line, but raises a curious brow all the same. Clerics to whom? They ask. Oh, sadly, I do not have the language skill to pronounce the name of that deity properly myself, and I would hate to offend them, the shopkeep replied, with just enough disappointment in this statement that it was almost believable. But I am happy to share their divine assistance to anyone who might be in need. How does one use this? Simply burn the cones and the deity will reveal themselves. With this, the shopkeep opened the box and showed the group a set of 7 incense cones. You can burn as many at a time as you wish, but be sure to note that the more you light, the greater the divine response will be. Use them wisely, dear adventurers. And they pushed the box into their hands, refused any payment, and escorted them out before even their rogue could slip away to hide in that room. Well, that wasn't very helpful, one of them grumbles outside the shop. We need to find answers for what we saw in there. Maybe there will be something there. In the meantime, we can examine these things, another says as they glance at the box of incense in disgust and unease. Couldn't we just go back in there and get the rest of those things? Then burn them all and stop the problem at the source? Are you seriously suggesting we attempt to summon and kill a god? We don't actually know a deity's involved with the attacks. That could have just been something they've been commanded to say about the item. Cleric immediately speaks up. Divine interventions like those mentioned cannot be summoned with a single incense cone. Enough. We need to return and report to the guild masters about what we've learned here. Maybe someone there has heard of something like this, or knows where we can find more information. Once we have that, we can make a better plan to proceed. And that's what they do. They try to research the symbols and carvings they saw. They try to gather more information about what this could actually be, but find very little. The cones seem to have extremely powerful conjuration magics within them, but they cannot tell what it conjures when burned. The most they are able to dig up is a mention of something like this happening in a religious text several 100 years ago, attributing random attacks to something called the Hounds of Null and Void. But there's nothing about what that means or what can stop them. Or, indeed, if they can be stopped at all. Without any other options and the thought of more people buying those remaining boxes, the party goes into action. Their rogue and some friends from their personal guild make their way back to the shop and steal the rest of the remaining boxes of incense. And unfortunately, they agree that the best way to deal with this probably, indeed, is to confront the creature the cones conjure. So, they find a large abandoned building in the edge of the city. It's isolated enough that if things get out of control, there's time before anything can reach anyone else. And on top of that, there are other members of their guilds, as well as many of the city guards surrounding the area, prepared to step in to contain things if needed. They set up a very small altar, like the one they saw in that magically hidden room, thinking it may help draw the actual entity to them rather than merely any effects it may send. And, slowly, they begin to light and burn the incense cones. The smoke of the cones is thick, with a very faint scent of some unknown kind of flower, rising in thick plumes like a rolling fog in the building. Something about this fog makes the hairs on the back of all the adventurers' necks stand on end as they feel the magic starting to take place. Energy crackles through the air as the curling smoke between the incense cones begins to gather together. The keenest eyes of the group spot that the pattern on the cones has changed, and they shudder as they see that pattern has opened into a staring eye, a vivid, bright blue pupil that stares up at the group, tracking their movements. The smoke is thickening, and with the burning of as many cones as they had, that's a lot of smoke, and it starts to rise up higher and higher, building into a column that towers over the group. Smoke that is growing darker and darker as the surrounding candles are being snuffed out. Each of the adventurers clutches their weapon tightly as they prepare themselves. Something is indeed coming. They can all sense it. Something big. Something hungry. Something ancient. And extremely powerful. The presence of this thing's aura fills the room and physically knocks most of them to their knees, gasping as the air is knocked out of them. The cleric is the most stunned by this, for this is a power usually something only beings like gods can do. Was the shopkeep actually telling the truth of what kind of entity the items summon? They all look up at the column of smoke that is now looking like the heart of a black hole, and within, they see the eyes open and look down at them. Outside the building, the other guild members and city guard are waiting nervously. They can feel something has happened, but even still, the screaming that rises, coupled with the sounds of swords clanging and spells going off with concussive blasts, makes them all jump before they start to sprint forward to help. However, many of them are also brought to their knees by the aura of the thing within, and the very few strong enough to force themselves onward are slowed as they reach the doors. They throw them open, and smoke billows from the building, starting to spill out to the city streets. The guard who opened the doors was covered in the smoke and screamed as his feet were knocked out from under him and something dragged him into the darkened building. The experienced adventurers outside gasp in shock at the immediate reaction. "Stay out of the smoke!" they order, and everyone who can retreats as the smoke creeps further outward, tendrils of it almost looking like claws dragging it forward. One of them throws up a spell to make the wind push the smoke back. It does seem to slow its advance, but they can see it fighting against their spell. More join in the effort to contain it, and now it's a question of endurance as more and more smoke is billowing from the building. The wind picks up as they try to disperse the smoke, but it stubbornly fights against that too. It feels like this goes on for hours, with those outside using everything they can to keep the smoke from traveling to the rest of the city. And finally, after the incense cones have finally burnt themselves out, the smoke begins to thin and eventually evaporate, taking that pressure off them all as the aura leaves with it. Within the building, the signs of whatever battle took place are evident. Scorch marks, cracks in the grounds, and scratches litter every inch of the space, as well as the blood and scattered remains of the adventurers within. The biggest piece they can find is the hand of the cleric, left near the circle where the cones were originally burned, and they see the words carved into the ground, words that make their blood run cold.
Sacrifice accepted.
All right, that's it for this one. Thank you everyone who watched this far into the video, and possibly my previous ones as well. More of these are still on the way, so I will see you all in the next video. Until then, sweet dreams, everyone. And here's to all the little things that bring out the magic in you.